I want them to understand money. They're not going to get taught this in schools. If you're waiting for schools to teach your kids how to run their finances and learn about all the different aspects of money and how to be responsible around money, you're going to be sorely disappointed. They're not going to be taught. So I want to take that ball into my own court, right? It's hard for me to teach them social skills in terms of I can teach them some of the basics of firm handshake, look people in the eyes, stand up when somebody walks into the room. Don't just sit there like a lug and say, hey, like I teach them how to be a professional. So I can teach them some of those basics, but school can teach them being around other kids and all that. That can teach them the social aspects. So I want to be able to teach them what I can impart wisdom upon them. And yeah, my kids are very clear about the fact that I've built up businesses, I've invested into real estate, I've created streams of passive income that allow me to live this kind of life with you. And if you want this, this is what you're going to have to learn and what you're going to have to do, because I'm not handing it to you. I can promise you that.
Every adversity, every failure, every heartache carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. And you're telling me about what this quote meant to you.
It applies to everything in my life, really. In business, I've had multiple setbacks, as everybody does, inevitably. There's no area of life that you go unscathed in. And I always have to go back to that quote, because understanding that the adversity and those setbacks and that failure is always for my greater good. And in the moment, it does not feel that way. But when I look back at the adversities that I've had, they've always turned out to be good. And it's really hard, though, and extremely difficult in the moment to think that's possible when you're going through some real tough stuff. So that quote has always carried me through.
I think it's really good to have affirmations, inspirational things to carry you through. I've got one of my favorites is Winston Churchill. And I got this bookmark. It's like never, never, never quit.
Yeah.
The other one of his I like, if you're in hell, keep going because you'll find yourself on the other side. I love that one.
He's got a lot of great quotes.
He does. He does. You're mentioning as well, one of the funny things was like, hey, if you're a father, this is exactly your life, referring back to the Napoleon Hill quote. What can you tell us about that?
We don't get a handbook when we become parents. I know there's books out there that teach you how to be parents. Most of us don't bother reading them. Unfortunately, that's how it goes. And I'm not saying that your podcast is going to have huge downloads. I already know that. I'm putting it out there for you. It's going to be incredible. But we don't know what we don't know. So when we get into parenting, there's so much adversity that's thrown against us of, well, how do I handle this situation with him? Am I being overly strict? Am I not being strict enough? Am I leading them and guiding them to become real men? I have two boys, right? Obviously, if you have girls, congratulations to you. Would have loved to have one, but it wasn't in the cards. And just knowing and understanding and appreciating the fact that it's like every other area of life. There's a lot of adversity, but a ton of really amazing things that come out of it. Being a dad is the most amazing gift that I've been given.
Yeah. I reflect a lot on spending 9 months with my wife who's pregnant. She's changing. She understands the baby is very real for her. And now, because I just had my second child, just recognizing that until she was there, I have two girls, wasn't really real for me. Like intellectually, I understood that it was happening, but really that emotional, that physical bond of, oh yeah, there's a kid here. It didn't really happen until I saw number two being born right there.
Show me the money, so to speak. Show me the actual baby. I know it's incubating in there. Oh, come on. This is really a human. Show me.
Yep. Yeah, that's great. Do you have any, so this is like sons. I'm completely out of my element. I have one daughter, she's 10, another one, 0. What kind of I know the adversity that I faced with a daughter. What are the big things with sons?
I think that one of the problems that we've had to overcome, my wife and for some people out there, this could seem rather shallow, and I apologize if it appears that way. We were both very competitive athletes. Now, my wife,
Mm,
as a female, was a much better athlete than me comparative, right? Now
sure.
I can smoke her in anything that we compete against.
Sure.
I gotta say that. But as a competitive athlete, former, and still to this day a very competitive person, we had expectations that based on the way we showed up in our lives that our sons would be the same. And it turns
Mm,
out they are not great athletes and they are pretty average. And they're also sometimes lack the competitive drive and some of the kind of like closing out and running your absolute hardest race. Like we constantly question my oldest son, is he running as hard as he really could? Because we expect our expectations are here and the results are down here. And in that gap between the two is our level of unhappiness. Just yesterday at a meet, my wife and I are waiting in the woods, right? They're running through the tree line, and John is quite a bit behind. And so we were talking about how we just don't have any expectations anymore. And it's really helping us have more peace in our lives that we're just letting them be, let them figure it out. Let them, like, it's their problem. I've got 99 of my own problems. I don't need to take on his, whether his is, it's not a problem to him. Maybe he's happy with how he runs and how he's performing. And if that's the case, great. Let's just let him do his thing and support. And we just cheer. We just cheer and yell and say, go, John. And that's all we do. We don't give any sort of like lectures anymore. We've relinquished all of that.
I love this example because I think that a lot of, the feel good father who's listening right here, he might have what I know there's a philosopher, I can't quite recall his name, who talks about this, that your children are not a reflection on you, and the choices that they make are not a reflection of the choices that you make. And in the same way that you are not a reflection on your children, the choices you make are not indicative of anything that they're doing. And so there's really the place that you've come to here is that idea of that independence where I can just enjoy them. I can be responsible for them. I can help shape them, but I'm not responsible for the results that they generate in their life anymore. And I think that's lovely. And so Feel Good Father, if you're in that space, take a look at kind of what's going on for you.
Yeah. When my firstborn son, John, when he was born 14 years ago, I remember holding him in the hospital. My wife was watching the conversation and I had a talk with him. And I was essentially what I was telling him as a little baby, I was saying, talking about all the things we were going to do together and all the fun things that we were going to do together. But I was also talking about, oh, you're going to win the state high school basketball championship and do what I couldn't do and what I wasn't able to get done in my life. I want you to complete that for me, essentially,
Mm.
is what I was saying looking back on it. And now to have him no interest in playing, he never really liked it from the get-go, it wasn't his thing. And that was my expectation for my life that I was putting on him. And that is not fair. That they need to be free to be who they want to be. And I think a lot of parents have that problem. It is a problem, is when you have these unfair expectations on your own children,
Yeah.
you're setting yourself up for probably a lot of adversity and heartache that you could avoid.
That is so critical. Don't add turmoil. I love that as a lesson. That's so great. How are you figuring out who John wants to be?
It's a constantly evolving process.
Right.
You start to see, like, what is it that they interest and gravitate towards. And he is very good with tech. My podcast setup for my show, Indestructible Wealth, he ordered all the equipment from Amazon himself. He set it all up for me. He ordered all the parts for the high def camera that I use to film some of my content. He records me. He does some basic editing.
Hmm.
Loves doing that stuff at the church. He is the on the video team, like the tech team, right? That's where he's gravitating. That is so foreign to me. Like it's an opposite skill set to what I have. I have none of those skills to this day. And so that's exciting that he's found something that he's gravitating towards that's a completely opposite of what I would enjoy doing or what I'm good at.
Yeah.
And I'm like, where did that come from? God only knows.
Right.
It wasn't from his mother or from me. So you got to allow them to just be cool with whatever gifts that they have. Let them go for it.
I think the underlying piece, if I can add this, is you're paying attention, right? You're creating this space to allow him to show you who he is, to I always think about it as leave the house a little bit, go explore the adventurous countryside and come back with some knowledge and come back with some sort of result. What you were telling me earlier about that sort of intentionality, that awareness, and you were really aware of something that you were really young. And I think the Feel Good Father would really like to hear this. It's not spoken about a lot.
Yeah, when I was 19, I was pitched on a network marketing business, and some people absolutely love it and some people hate it. And it's just pretty much like everything in life. There's always going to be lovers and haters of anything, right?
Mm.
And so when I saw the plan and it had the ability to create residual income, build something up, build up an asset to where I didn't have to be traveling and away from the home. I didn't have to be working 80 hours a week to be able to support the family and live a good life. I had in my mind at that point, that was my vision when I started that business. And a lot of younger men, in my opinion, they're looking for the weekend. They're looking for the next beer or drink or girl they can score. And that's fine. Like I did all that. And that's no judgment whatsoever. Short-term things, pleasures, great. Responsibly, of course.
Right.
But
Yeah.
having a longer term vision of where is your life going in terms of how are you designing it, and
Mm.
having ability to forward think yourself down even a decade, that was an important thing for me because that paid off big. I've been a present father for my kids. I've been at everything 95%.
Sure.
Like next weekend, I'm going to a sales conference and I'm going to miss a cross country meet. Okay. So that it's going to happen. But 95%, I'm on the sidelines. I'm in the stands. I'm cheering them on. I'm like right there, number one fan. And the same thing at home. Like they have access to me if they need anything. My office is right here. I work here from home, and I love that ability and flexibility to be present with them. Really, honestly, that's one of the main reasons I do work from home. I get lonely here. It's just me and my dog hanging out all day, oftentimes by ourselves. I
Right.
do get lonely, but I also, it was an intentionality so that I'm here when they wake up, even though they ignore me for the most part and they're on their devices, but I take them to school and
Yep.
then they ignore me in the car.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then I'm here when they get home and they generally tell me, hey, dad, but I'm present and I'm
Right.
doing the best that I can and I'm here for them. And those were things that were very important to me, even at a young age. So I would just really hope that your show is attracting guys that don't have families yet that are thinking about it.
Yeah.
You really want to be thinking about what kind of present father do you want to be? And then therefore you got to make some decisions and grasp some opportunities that are going to help you align with that.
100%. 100%. I think it's absolutely critical that you have, as you're saying, that you have something that you're pursuing. I think that when it comes to the way you're showing up in the world, that ambition, that drive, that execution, all that comes from what it is you want to create. And you never want to be in a position that a lot of people find themselves in, a lot of fathers find themselves in, where they're executing on somebody else's dream. And I think that's the base state for most of the people that are out there, right? They're not living into what they want to create. They're a victim of their circumstances. They're not able to do what it is that they want to do, and they're missing out on their life. And it's terrible. It's the plight, right? The plight of modern people.
Yes. 100% agree.
So how are you sending this out? Like, how are you educating your sons on doing this? I'm sure that it's come up. I'm sure that this value of designing and engineering your life has come up. What are you doing to instill that into your sons?
I play games with them. It gets more difficult as they get older because they're in school all day long, and then after school is sports, and then after sports is homework. And of course, I run 5 companies. I have my own podcast, blog. I take on a lot in my career. And so it is difficult to keep that going, but it was a lot of Monopoly, a lot of rich cash flow from Rich Dad, Poor Dad. We played those games and drilled them a lot because I want them to understand money. They're not going to get taught this in schools. If you're waiting for schools to teach your kids how to run their finances and learn about all the different aspects of money and how to be responsible around money, you're going to be sorely disappointed. They're not going to be taught. So I want to take that ball into my own court, right? I'm not going to teach them. It's hard for me to teach them social skills in terms of I can teach them some of the basics of firm handshake, look people in the eyes, stand up when somebody walks into the room. Don't just sit there like a lug and say, hey, like I teach them how to be a professional. So I can teach them some of those basics, but school can teach them being around other kids and all that. That can teach them the social aspects. So I want to be able to teach them what I can impart wisdom upon them. And yeah, my kids are very clear about the fact that I've built up businesses, I've invested into real estate, I've created streams of passive income that allow me to live this kind of life with you. And if you want this, this is what you're going to have to learn and what you're going to have to do, because I'm not handing it to you. I can promise you that. They're clear. Oh, so I have a Tesla, and I drove my son to school. This has happened to both of them.
Okay.
I drop them off at school, and the kids will say, oh my God, your dad drives a Tesla. You're rich. And so he got into the car and he said, I'm rich. He didn't really realize it. And I said, no, I said, how much is in your bank account? Oh, $400. I'm like, no, you're broke. I'm rich. If you want to be rich, you're going to have to build it your own. I'm not giving it to you. You're going to have to develop those skills and become the man that can attract that for yourself.
Yeah. Boom. Like
That's
mic drop, right?
That's the most favorite thing I've ever said to my kids is you're not rich. I'm rich. You're broke. You got to go out and build your own stuff.
I love that. I think when I think of, you brought up your church a little bit. So when I think of like the Abrahamic story, then Genesis there, it's really the story of a guy that's false started. It's like he's 80, living at home, not really doing much. He gets the call and then he goes out, gets the call and goes out and pursues a promise for the next couple hundred years. And I think when I think of the plight of sons and what they're doing today, they're in that pattern. A lot of people are just false starting. They're not really executing on a vision. I don't believe it is that they're partaking in any given activity. So it's not that they're playing video games. It's not that they're going out partying and drinking. It's not that any individual thing. It's what is that activity replacing? What is the opportunity that we're around the same age that they're missing out on? So for us, a big piece of going out and building the thing was getting out of the house, constantly doing that, constantly going out and being social, constantly putting yourself out there. we didn't have to rely on that little device that sits in our pocket.
I know.
Right. And so there's that social skill as well. They're not going to be learning. I think the statistics are crazy nowadays of young kids around your kids' age that are on devices constantly. It's
Yeah.
like, what are you doing?
Yeah. I don't have a great answer to that. We haven't figured that one out because they're on them all the time. And yeah, we just have not figured out a great system to be able to moderate it. At one point, we thought we had the grand idea. I read it in a book where for every hour that they read, they get a chip, like a poker chip, and
Sure.
it's in one jar, and then they can spend that on an hour of video play. The problem with that is, as busy, super hyper busy parents, we're on the go all day long. We're not sitting around the house. We're not watching Oprah at 4 o'clock or whenever it was on. We're we're busting our butts. So to enforce that was extremely challenging and difficult. It just didn't work. So where's that line? The best thing that you can do as a parent is just try to get your kids involved in a lot of stuff.
Right.
And that's how you keep them off video games.
Yep.
Get them into all the sports or whatever it is that they're
Right.
interested in, get them into those things, encourage it, support it, fund it, get them into. That's how our best play is, doing those types of things. And then taking them on the weekends. We take them always with us out on the boat. Of course, there's times where we want to go out on the boat without our kids, like parents only, right? Typically, it's very rare that we do because we want to pull them with us, be around us. It's a short window of opportunity that we have to be around us. In a couple of years, they're not going to be wanting to be around us at all. So we're just trying to do everything we can to drive them off of the devices. At the end of the day, let's face it, technology, electronics, the devices, it's a part of our lives, and it will be a part of our lives for the foreseeable future, for a
Right.
long time. So we just try to mitigate it, not eliminate it.
I think what's really important here is you talk a lot about, we opened with, you got to get them under the idea that they can own their life. You got to get them under the idea that your results, the fruits of your labor, aren't necessarily the results of their labor, right? So they got to do that. But then also what you mentioned is show them the enjoyment, show them that it's not just all work, show them it's not just constantly the constant accrual, the constant creation of wealth, that there's this other side of it, which is the enjoyment, the activities, the investment into different extracurriculars. I think that's really awesome. That's definitely commendable. So let's take, for example, there's a feel-good father who's listening, right? And he's working on this aspect. What do we tell the feel-good father that is, oh, I definitely want this. I want to maybe start down the passive stream, or I want to educate my kids to expand their horizons. What's some wisdom we can give them?
There's the simple 3 habits that you can incorporate that could then allow you to become a feel-good father. I should say present father, and present in terms of how much do you want to be present? Maybe you'll be miserable working from home like I do, and being here in the morning when they wake up, and when they get home, you may be totally miserable. I completely understand. So that may not be your cup of tea, but having the freedom and flexibility to be able to not have to go somewhere for, say, a week to work a job or be away from your kids from sun up to sundown, because you have to be able to generate the income to support your family. It's a 3-step process, very simple. First step is you live below your financial means. Now, it's very easy to say, it's very difficult to do. You're inundated with 10,000 marketing messages per day, especially if you're on social.
Mm-hmm.
You're definitely at 10,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
So every 3 scrolls, every 3 posts on Facebook is an ad. Right. They're usually targeted to you, what your interests are. So we have that, right? We have social, which is now given us access to what other humans are doing 24/7. And now we get to see all the shiny objects that we want to have right now. We don't want a delayed gratification for them. So living below your means, creating a surplus of money is extremely important. It's the foundational to everything of a proper financial management and managing a household budget. As a household, you do not have the right or the ability to print money out of your problems like the government can. They're the only ones that get to do that. You can print trillions of dollars at will, just a simple decision, and it's there. We don't get
Right.
to do that. So we have to run a responsible household budget. So then habit 2 is that we need to be constantly thinking about how we can optimize and increase our own income. And the way you do that, the only way to do that in all reality, is that you need to be focused on increasing your skill sets. So spending time in educating yourself and taking courses, hiring coaches, listening to podcasts that are going to help you up your skill sets inevitably will help you rise your income up. We have multiple streams of some pretty nice income, and I can tell you that most of it has been created because of the relationships and the people that have coached us on how to do it. But it was hiring coaches, sometimes seeking out people that they had what we wanted. It was a result of networking. So that's number 2. If you want the simplest way to implement number 2, take the most successful people at your workplace, whether it's your job or in your business field, take them out to lunch, treat them to lunch, ask them questions, and then shut up and listen to what they have to say. And then you'll have, in no time, you could be world-class at what you do too. Number 3 is you take the surplus that you're creating from steps 1 and 2, and then you put that into and create multiple streams of passive income. I like real estate. I like crypto. Stocks are okay for me. Not much of my wealth has been built on that asset class, but I think it's a great long-term play to build wealth. Of course, it's certainly over the course of time, even despite the recent pullback and volatility that we're experiencing, it's a great way to grow wealth. So
it's a great time to buy.
It's a great time. Absolutely. Like we're right now, as we record, we're pretty close to a market bottom.
Yeah.
And yeah, you want to be going against your instincts right now, which are preserve yourself safety. And this is when you're at the lowest risk. So that's a whole different conversation.
Sure.
But investing into things that can create income streams that aren't reliant upon you physically present, operating, and working, it does take time to build those. It's not like it's a year process. It's a multi-year process to do. And it's that commitment to that plan. That's the playbook from Rich Dad, Poor Dad I read 20 years ago when he came out with that book in 2000 or whatever, late 90s. That was his playbook. He gave us the playbook. I followed the playbook. We're rich,
Right.
we're
Right.
independent, and we're financially able to do whatever we want with our family.
I think that's the picture, and picture that we're not taught in the media, and it is directly aligned with the picture of raising our sons and daughters as fathers, that the growth and the creation of wealth, stability, options, freedoms, opportunity, it's a lot of late nights, a lot of hard work, but it's that commitment and persistence in the activity. If you're hanging out as a father, the same skill set, that same mindset is being used, because you're not looking at your 2-year-old saying, 2-year-old, will you just become 10?
Yeah.
It's not happening. You're along for the ride.
That's right.
But it's
You're
that
patient.
Yeah, it's that consistent, regular, everyday time.
Well, here's the thing that throws us off, Jay, is that we know with kids, there's a gestation period. We know what that is. We know for a baby, it's approximately 9 months. We know that. So when we're at 4 months, we're not like knocking on your wife's belly and saying like, where are you? Like, why are you not coming yet? You're supposed to come on. You're taking forever.
Yeah.
We know the gestation period. The problem is, and then we know like when they're two, like we know that there's a gestation period of growth that needs to happen to where they're like going to really start communicating in properly with their language, right? So we know those things there, but yet we tend to in our financial lives, we don't allow the patience for the gestation period to really take place and to really let it evolve and grow. We want things faster than what they are designed to be. And that's why so many young new investors, they go into things that are pretty like really risky, and they put all of their principal capital into risky assets, and then those assets end up usually busting most of the time, and they have to start all over. I did this when I was 19, so there's no judgment. 50,000, all my money went into tech stocks and the bubble burst in 2000, and we pretty much can figure out what happened to my money. Somebody else got it. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
So it is common, and I've been through it, and I see a lot of people doing it. We've got to resist that, and it's easier said than done. I get it.
I really like this idea of you're waiting, the muscle of patience, that muscle of patience that you're flexing when the kid's screaming at 3 o'clock in the morning and because they're hungry, or you're changing the diaper, or you're disciplining and they're looking at you with daggers in their eyes, or whatever it happens to be, like all the situations that we're hitting it with patience. And that feel good father that wants to have that better life can follow these 3 steps and then do which is really, it's funny that you say Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad. I think for me, a lot of it was Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, Harv T. Eker.
Oh yeah, it's a top 5 for me. I recommended that on a recent reel.
That's awesome. And
like
I
actually pick up loose change.
Yes, I
on
always
the
do.
ground,
Always
and I say,
do.
I am a money magnet. I
Yes.
still say it to this day. I read that book 20 years ago.
Exactly.
I do any hack I can get to
Yeah.
trick my subconscious into believing that I'm abundant.
Hey, what I want to impart here to the feel good father is that the way you do one thing is the way that you do all things.
Yes.
So if you are patient and you are developing the skill and you have this muscle and you're looking to build wealth, you're looking to develop any skill, if you're looking to do anything that requires time and you've raised a kid, you have the skill. Now you just apply the same learnings to the next piece, right? Whatever that skill happens to be, you apply the same learning to it that you have in raising your kids.
That's absolutely true. When I think about what you just said, I look at it in terms of the 5 companies that I've built. Now, there's 2 that are in startup still. Indestructible Wealth is not a profitable operation yet. It's a startup. That's common.
Right.
It takes time. You're going to put money into it, and that's going to take time to build up and to get the leads and the sales and find your lane and all of that. And I just started up a crypto mining operation too. And that's a year ago we started it. And finally, as of this week, like we're online. It's pretty exciting, right? But a year later, past expectations.
Right.
I thought we were mining back in January. That was what I was expecting. And that's not how it worked out. So I look at though the first business and the sales and marketing skills and the people skills and all the personal development that I learned, I was able to take that knowledge, those skills, that experience, and then into the next business, the real estate business. I crushed it right out of the gate. 5 million in sales my first year, part-time from my home office, selling property 3 hours away, 3-hour drive away. And why? Because I learned all the skills and I had all the assets that I needed, so that when I did start that business, it was a lot easier and a lot quicker. Then the third, same thing, self-storage company, a fund, I should say. I did almost a $2 million raise twice, and just real nonchalant part-time texted out 10 people. Why? It's because I built up the trust and the network to be able to do something like that from the previous 2 businesses. So what's
the time gap? I want to make this
Yeah,
tangible
it's
for
great.
folks, right? What's the time? What's that time between business one, business three?
Yep. So business one was 1997 till 2000, and I want to say 15 was when I started into real estate and started as a part-time additional business.
18
So what do we
years.
got? 18 years. Yeah.
A high school graduate for
Yeah.
business one, that a high school graduate turns into, most real estate is profitable within 2 or 3 years. So probably on your 5 million, you're looking at what, 2, 3 years in that business?
Well, I made like 800 grand that first year doing that.
Okay, great. Even better.
But
So
then
you
the
went straight
next
to
year I
that,
didn't
right?
do that at all. Like the next year I didn't do that much.
Sure.
And then no, this year though, we're having a amazing year. We've made 400 grants just since June in that. And I haven't taken it, but I want to preface that and say, I had not taken a profitable paycheck out of that company since I was turned 40. It's 4 years that went by where we were just pouring money into the business and making mistakes and losing money and then fixing those mistakes. And then we're developing new processes and then bringing on new partners and new employees.
Right.
So all the money has gone back into it. And now finally I'm getting the fruits of my labor. So that was what we're talking 6 years in that business. And now then I started the third, and then the fourth and the fifth have all happened within a few months of each other.
So that's a college graduate. So that's an undergrad. That's 18 plus 6 is
Yeah.
2 years out of college. So it's effectively a master's degree to turn around and build your second profitable business. I think it's really critical that in today's day and age, that when we're looking at people that have built this structure, they're older gents, right? In this age bracket that have put in the time, that have raised an additional child. There's a lot of business owners who are kind of like, yeah, raising this business was like raising another child. I think that's, time is on your side, right? Time is where you get your reps, where you put in your iterations. You don't go to the gym, lift one weight, and then become bulky, right? It's like, it's even then, like I've been hitting it really hard I just started brand new for a year with a trainer. I'm now starting to see the results. It just takes time. And then
It does take time. Here's what advice I can give your listeners, and I'm sure you can back me up on this.
Yep.
Sure. We met through brand building coaching. Right?
That's right.
I think that curve, that length of time, like it took me 18 years, right, to build up one business and then have that to be running to the level and the sales and the ability to be able to go start another business, right? You don't want to start up a brand new business and then try to go and start something else. That's a recipe for failure. I think that's a terrible idea. You'll spread yourself too thin. You need to stay hyper focused on one thing. And as you can see from my track record, that's what I've done. Just focused on one thing, build that up, and then you take on something else if you want as an entrepreneur. And some people stay in the same business for 40 years and they're happy with that. And that's great. And I just think that's awesome. And sometimes I wish I could be that guy, but that wasn't how God designed me, apparently.
Right.
But I think that that overall, that could be shortened quite a bit if you build up and put out quality content over and over, repetitiously, relentlessly, and build up an audience. Then you're going to be able to take that audience that knows, likes, and trusts you, and you're going to be able to build a business through that, whatever you decide that is, preferably, obviously, to go in line with the subject that you're talking about, something that you're most passionate about. But pick something that you're passionate about and that you could talk about all day long for free, because you will.
Yes.
You will for a year or two. You'll be talking about it for free. So you might as well like really love talking about it, but looking at the long-term play of, I'm building up an ecosystem here of which now I'm going to be able to really do some amazing things in whatever business or venture that I decide to do. And it could be multiple ventures down the line. I follow a guy that he's younger than me, and he's built up 1.5 million followers across multiple channels. And he said that he makes $1 million a month selling his products and services from his multitude of companies to that following. I can see that playing out for myself. Like it's starting to finally happen after a year and a half of relentlessly putting out valuable content. I'm starting to see that right before you and I got on. Talked to a guy that was been following my podcast and my Instagram, and we just got on a Zoom, and he's putting 200 grand into our storage fund, right?
You don't
That's
you don't get
the
that
power of building up a digital brand.
100%. And for those of you that are curious, go ahead and check out the show notes. There'll be a link in there for you. Absolutely agree with that. And then also, you don't get mad at your kid for falling when they're trying to learn how to walk, right? So when you're figuring out how to be a lead source for whatever it is that you're doing, your existing business, even if you're W-2 and you're trying to drive some leads or drive some awareness for you, maybe climb the ladder, whatever it is, whatever path it is that you're walking to increase that income, get after it, develop the skill, be a new father. In the first little bit, you're going to fall.
You're going to suck at it.
You're going to really stink.
Yeah.
It takes a long time.
100%. I suck at everything that I do when I first started.
Yeah.
There's not one thing in life that I've been good at when I first started it. Like nothing. I was not a great husband in our early years of our marriage. I know that. I think that in the first couple of years of my firstborn son, I was probably a pretty crappy father. Like I was working 14 hours a day. I don't even remember at all seeing him when he was his first couple of years.
Yeah.
I sucked at golf. And even a couple of years later, right now, of lessons since COVID, lockdowns, I picked up golf and hired a coach. Still have some rough outings, right? But I'm much, much better than when I first started. Everything. Poker, lost money. Real estate, lost money. Made money, lost money, right? So you just got to be patient with yourself. It's going to take time.
Yeah. Something I think that has plagued me that I'd love to get your take on would be this idea of, am I doing enough? And you hinted at it a little bit when you're describing the first couple of years of your son's lives, the first couple of years of your of your life as a husband. How do you navigate that? Like, how do you navigate the question, am I a good enough husband? Am I a good enough father? Am I a good enough person? Like, how do you deal with that?
I think that we're always going to be short of our expectations for ourselves. And I think that, look, we're all doing the best that we can with the tools that we currently have. I don't believe that anybody is not doing the best that they can. So that's what my fundamental belief about people, and I believe it about myself, is that even the mistakes that I've made in the past, at that period of time, I just didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't have the tools to make better decisions. And so you just continually grow and evolve and try to learn from other people's mistakes. But there are some times where we just simply have to make the mistake ourselves in order to learn. And that's okay. Really want to make sure that any mistakes that you want to make sure that they don't harm somebody else, right? You really want to, like, if you're going to mess up, okay, you mess up your own life, your own self, but
Sure,
let's not mess up anybody else's. So I think that if you're a good human, like you have empathy and you really want to be the best person that you can be, where you really turn the line, like as a father, is when you get to the point, and this is maturity, where it's no longer just about your own ambitions and your own things that you want. It's now you're looking at, wow, there's a bigger game to life, and I'm going to be much happier if my focus is on helping other people solve their problems, helping other people to become better. And if you can get to there, that's true maturity. That's when you really become a legit father, is that you have that ability to be able to discern between lack of maturity and maturity.
I love it. You're describing really taking really high ownership and being a very responsible person. And if there's a word that's associated with men, fatherhood, responsibility is a big one.
Yeah.
And as one of my favorite thought leaders says a lot, as you take on more responsibility, you can take on more and more responsibility. And then, as he says, you get to become a monster because you take on really crazy things. Jack, if this has been such a great conversation, I think we've added a lot of really great value to the Feel Good Father out there listening. One thing I can't stress enough is that it doesn't really matter where you're at or what stage you're at. If you're brand new and you're just figuring this stuff out from where you are and your life's in shambles, it can get better. If your life's already great and you're just taking some extra pieces of information and knowledge here, wonderful. It's going to be super great. If folks want to learn more about you and what you're doing, connect with you, where can they go?
Yeah, my website, myindestructiblewealth.com. It has a link to my blogs, which I personally write, and they're full of my own personal stories. I've got a podcast show called The Indestructible Wealth Show. I've got a book and then a free guide. They can purchase the ebook, immediate download, or learn about how to create multiple streams of passive income. And everything's right there on the site, including links to my Instagram, which is Indestructible Wealth. I'm active on that quite a bit. And I just want to close out and say, look, if you get this right as a father, you're going to score. You love your kids unconditionally with all your heart. You're just there for them, supporting them and encouraging them, and you're present. You're going to make mistakes. Look, there's times where I get angry, and unfortunately I've dropped some words that I wish that I hadn't, right? But they know that there's a relentless love that I have for them. They know that. It's tell them every day, no matter whether they want to hear it or not, that I love them, right? And so just do that. Those things are the core foundation. And then, of course, my opinion is, like, raise them in a godly home, right? So they're inundated with Christianity and going to church every Sunday, and that's just a part of our lives. So we give them those foundations of God's love for them and our love for them and our unconditional support and encouragement for them. Look, I can mess up a lot of other things, but if I get those things right, I'm scoring. I'm a feel good father.
100%. Jack Gibson, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Feel Good Fathers, hit that like button to let YouTube know that you liked this video. Comment below with your thoughts and reactions to this interview. I really want to hear what you have to say. As a personal brand strategist, I hear all the time about coaches, trainers, speakers, and authors doing the right thing, but at the wrong time. We specialize in helping brand builders have more impact, more credibility and clarity, and developing an overall brand strategy. When you work with Brand Builders Group, we'll help you do the right thing at the right time. Request a free brand call below. There's a link in the description. And don't forget to subscribe. You'll get updates when the new episodes are launched, and it really helps out the community and the channel. We'll see you next time.